Hello, welcome everyone. We're going to talk about Daredevil tonight, episodes 1 through 3 of the Disney Plus Daredevil reboot show. And I've watched all 3 episodes. I've watched 1 and 2 multiple times. I've watched episode 3 only once, but I got the general idea. We're going to talk about this thing. For starters, it really bears no resemblance to the comic. All right. They've adapted quite a bit of the Frank Miller comic into other seasons of Daredevil. If I remember correctly, season 2 and 3, maybe, but I forget which one it is. Whichever one brought in Elektra. So Elektra's already been in the story, but I'm pretty sure they've already adapted the bulk of the Daredevil Born Again story, including Nuke, who I believe has already been in the Netflix series. So this is a concoction of Charles Soule's Daredevil, I think a little bit of Bendis, and some of the recent Daredevil stuff where he ends up killing somebody or trying to kill someone and falling into a pit of despair. So we're going to talk about this, and um, as a huge Daredevil fan, I was looking forward to it. As a huge Daredevil fan, I have been really, really hoping that this was good, and I think it is good. It's solid. It's slower paced, and then the Netflix, but it's just as graphic. You know, there's murders, there's cussing. It's a pretty solid show in terms of language and things of that nature. So overall, I think it nailed the aesthetics, had the same visual, a similar feel to the Netflix version of the same product. So that was a positive. But clearly, they're going in a certain direction that may, I guess you could say, agitate certain people, with the police being the main villains of the story, and obviously the Kingpin as mayor, which is a modern Marvel thing. Um, that always has Trump vibes. So always consider that it could go left at any time. I think they're planting a lot of seeds for it to go very, very, very far left. But there's also some interesting bits in there that I think certain people might enjoy in terms of characters and character work. Um, but I'm not going to do a review of each episode as much as I'm going to tell you the overall plot and the overall plot over 3 episodes involving the major characters. And so let's get into this. So we got Matt Murdock, obviously, who is the Daredevil. We pick up with Matt, and Foggy is killed in episode 1. It might be a fake of death because that happens quite a few times in the comics, but um, Foggy Nelson is assassinated in episode 1 by Bullseye, who they've given the name Benjamin Poindexter, which I'm pretty sure is his name in the Netflix version of Daredevil as well. But his name is Lester. We don't know what his last name is, but Bullseye's name is Lester. Anyway, Benjamin Poindexter, he attacked a uh, a bar that was supposed to be the retirement of a police officer. He attacked it seemingly for no reason, murdered a bunch of people, clearly, of one of whom was Foggy Nelson, before Daredevil beat him up. I specifically love the visuals and the effects of Matt being able to hear everything as he's fighting. So he's listening to Foggy take his last breaths. He's listening to Karen scream and all this stuff as he's fighting on the roof. And then once Foggy dies, Matt, in a fit of frustration, he pushes Bullseye off the roof, but Bullseye survives, of course. But because he's so disgusted with himself and because of the death of Foggy Nelson, he ends up quitting being Bullseye. I mean, he quits being Daredevil. So from there, they essentially have set it up where Daredevil is not going to appear anymore. Matt's struggling with being Daredevil, and the core of the show is about whether you can change who you are. This is what a lot of the core characters are trying to grapple with. This is what the Kingpin is grappling with as well, to a degree. This is also with the police officer Cherry, who was the guy who was retiring, whose retirement was attacked by Bullseye. He's a police officer. He's not a big fan of these vigilantes. These masks, these capes, as they call them sometimes. But he finds out, of course, that Matt is Daredevil because he sees him on the roof. And he goes to work for Matt as a private investigator. So for the next 3 episodes, you don't see Daredevil at all, but you do see Matt basically as an attorney. This is something that you see a lot from Charles Soule. He basically wanted to write a Law and Order, the Daredevil, because Charles Soule, who was the writer, he was, I believe, a trained attorney before he got into comics. He was most known for writing, I believe, Daredevil. I think, did he also write the Black Bolt series that was very critically acclaimed? I think he did. Was that him? I think it was him. No, that was the other guy. That wasn't Black. That wasn't him. He wrote something else too. That was really popular. But his Daredevil actually was pretty successful, especially comparison. It wasn't successful in comparison to like Brubaker or even Bendis, but it was welcome after the absolute destruction Mark Waid put up on the character. So it was a welcome reprieve. But he wanted to make it essentially, where people want. Obviously, as this character lives forever, you do different things with it. They made Matt a prosecutor. They made him a defense attorney. They made him all sorts of things at this point. But they wanted to turn the series more into a legal drama. It was all about illegal immigration during Charles Soule's run, where there's like an illegal immigrant, a little boy who was blind, who he created a suit to make himself invisible, and then he became blind later, but whatever. But so that's kind of what they're going for here with Matt Murdock, is that he's given up being Daredevil. He doesn't want to be Daredevil anymore. But the streets are in chaos, and the streets could really use Daredevil. And you learn in episode 1 that there is a police shortage. There's like 30% of the police are leaving, they're retiring, they're quitting, etc. And this sets up the police angle, because now you see that there's a deeply rooted problem with the police. There's a schism between police officers and vigilantes, and the vigilantes are given all this credit. They're seen as heroes, while the police, they get sued and they end up in prison, all this kind of stuff. So basically, the police are feeling victimized, and the vigilantes are the real heroes. But there's a cadre of corrupt police officers still on the streets. They have Punisher tattoos with Blue Lives Matter. Like the Punisher skull with the Blue Lives Matter streak in it. I know it's going to get a lot of people's attention. It's going to get a lot of people tight-assed. Both the Punisher being used as a figure of the police, also with the Blue Lives Matter insignia being on there. This has become an issue for a long time. This is one of the things that goes back to the Punisher 30, 40 years in terms of would he be involved with, or would he be on the side of corrupt and violent police officers. This has already been dealt with. I forget which writer wrote it. I don't know if it was Dixon or who, but sometimes they will show that Frank he's generally on the side of the police. He doesn't really attack police officers. He doesn't kill police officers, etc. So that's part of the Punisher's like core code, is he doesn't really bother the police, but he sees the police as the people who should be doing the right thing. So he would not be on the side of corrupt police officers. And they've done this before. I forget what what Punisher series it was, where and what writer it was. But it was basically the Punisher says you guys are supposed to break the law, you're supposed to uphold the law. I'm the one that breaks the law. Kind of like, you know, I take care of what you guys. I catch the runoff. You guys do the best that you can. If they get away from you, then I got it. That sort of situation because they've done this numerous times before. There have been writers who have taken over the Punisher that have tried to make him cool to the police and all this sort of stuff. Adopting the insignia, of course, in real life, there is also police officers adopting the insignia of the Punisher, and that has worked itself into the series. And now the NYPD are the bad guys because the police are always the bad guys nowadays. Whatever. But this cadre of police officers, they are corrupt. They're now under the control of the Kingpin because the Kingpin is the mayor. So we get in episode 1, Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, is released from prison and he decides he's going to run for mayor. In doing so, he's going to give up all of his criminal activities. He finds out later on that his wife is running his business, and in order to be completely clean, he has to get his wife to quit controlling crime in New York, even though she wants to do this now. It feels weird because I'm not sure where Vanessa was in the Netflix series. I think she left him. I mean, I don't know. I haven't gone back and watched it, so I can't tell you. I don't remember. But she wants to continue and maintain control because with one of them, either herself or Wilson Fisk in control, there's not so much crime in the streets. And you learn in episode 3 that that's what Kingpin wants. He wants there to be sort of chaos so that he have a reason to enact stronger controls. So he doesn't want the families, the 5 families, the mob, the mafia. He doesn't want them to be under control. He wants them to run loose and commit robberies and all this kind of stuff so that he can enact stronger police presence and stronger criminal codes, etc. But his angle is he became mayor pretty easily. So, like, he became mayor in episode 1. He hadn't even been out that long, from my understanding. But there's people who, of course, still question what kind of person is Wilson Fisk. And Vincent D'Onofrio is absolutely a genius as Kingpin. He's owned this character. He's tremendous. And he has an anti-vigilante agenda, an anti-mask agenda, which is the same as the Kingpin in the comics. He hates these masked vigilantes. And of course, he's going to use the police and public sentiment to turn it against these vigilantes. As this leads us to the White Tiger incident, which happens in episode 3, where early in the episode, you see a guy getting roughed up, and then a weird Puerto Rican guy comes in. He knows all the kung fu, and he beats up these corrupt police officers. He pushes one of them in front of a train. The police officer dies, and then we get the trial and everything. We find out this Hector Ayala is really the White Tiger and is a vigilante who stalks the streets of New York. And first, Matt Murdock doesn't want the people to know that because they want to protect his secret identity. He wants to protect the guy and doesn't want him to be targeted as the White Tiger. Then we find out that there was a witness, the guy who was being beat up by the police. Daredevil tries to go in. Well, Matt Murdock, he's not as Daredevil. He goes to find this guy. He finds him eventually. He ends up having to fight some corrupt police officers who have the Punisher tattoo on them. We found out this guy's name is Nicky Torres. He's an informant. He's a snitch who's been working with the NYPD. They were roughing him up in the subway when Hector Ayala, who was not wearing his White Tiger jumpsuit, shows up and beats up the police officer and police officers and ends up pushing one of them in front of a train by accident. So that becomes the trial. And what you get in this situation essentially is a Daniel Penny situation where Hector Ayala is a good Samaritan who came to the aid of someone who was being attacked not on the train, but being attacked on the train platform. And should he be held accountable for the murder of a police officer when he was only fighting to help someone? So he's put in this Daniel Penny situation. Of course, they have souped it up by making, the guy who died a police officer, right? Um, so we have his trial. There's the cops that are trying to stop Nikki Torres from testifying. He testifies anyway, but he lies on the stand and says he wasn't supposed to be there to see the NYPD, or he was late, or whatever the case may be. Basically, he left Hector Ayala out to dry. And in order to combat this, Matt Murdock outs Hector Ayala as White Tiger. Earlier in the episode, or the previous episode, Matt did not want anybody to know that he was a White Tiger because he didn't want to prejudice the jury against vigilantism, because that's what Wilson Fisk had been running on, is anti-vigilantism. So now he's broken his own rule, essentially, and he's outed Hector as a vigilante. And White Tiger is a character who has a special amulet. Let's pause. I'm not that familiar. Like, I've read a lot of comics. I don't think I've read that much about White Tiger. I do know for sure that White Tiger is a female in Marvel Comics now. So I was surprised that White Tiger was a male on the show. But then when you see the end of episode 3, you you realize where they're going with this. So so Matt's defense changes from he was defending, Nikki Torres, to the White Tiger is a good guy. He's always stepped out and helped people. This is what he does. He wasn't out to hunt police officers. He didn't have his magic amulet. He didn't have his jumpsuit, all this sort of stuff. And magically, the jury says he's not guilty. So they let Hector Ayala walk. And this was perfect for the Kingpin, because now he's using White Tiger as part of his anti-vigilante propaganda. He calls in BB Urich, who is the niece of Ben Urich. I think Ben Urich was killed in the Netflix series, if I remember correctly. And he's using her to promote his anti-vigilante, anti-mask agenda. He has a very Chris Jericho view of this. People who wear masks are cowards. All right. So Hector Ayala beats the case. He was found not guilty on first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and manslaughter. And so now he's a free man. And his first night back in his White Tiger jumpsuit, he gets shot in the fucking head. He gets murdered in the street. It was so easy. He was literally like looking both ways before crossing the street and got shot in the head. Don't see how he was a successful vigilante. They shot him that easily. But the murderer had the Punisher logo on his chest. For those who have never read the comics, you would get the idea that the Punisher is out killing people and all this kind of stuff. But those of us who have read comics and know these characters, they know the Punisher ain't killing no goddamn superheroes for no reason. He certainly ain't in league with corrupt police officers. So that's essentially the story for the first 3 episodes. Matt Murdock he has this conversation with White Tiger in episode 3. White Tiger Hector Ayala, he doesn't know that Matt Murdock is Daredevil. He doesn't know. But after he outed him as White Tiger, they have this conversation, as Hector says, like, that wasn't your secret to give away. You should have talked to me first, blah, blah, blah. And Matt Murdock starts telling him, like, you can't do this anymore. Now that you have been outed as White Tiger, you can't do this. You can't be White Tiger ever again. And because now you can't be White Tiger ever again, you'll figure out that you really don't need to ever be White Tiger. Yes, it was a calling. That Hector called it a calling, which is the same thing Daredevil feels. He feels like he has to do this. But the creed with most superheroes, Daredevil and the Punisher, what they share in terms of a credo is that sometimes the law fails. Sometimes the bad guys get away, and that's the core of the series at this point. Is that Bullseye killed Foggy, and he got life in prison, but it doesn't bring Foggy back, and you still have this sort of justice was served. So maybe that's the right thing to do, is to actually get justice in the courts, and that led him to believe that he could better help New York by being an attorney rather than being Daredevil. So, and then you have the same thing with Kingpin, who says, okay, well, I've ruled New York as an underground um, mob figure. That hasn't worked. That just ended up with me in prison. I can better help New York as being the mayor. So you have this is what the core of the characters, and they're playing the Kingpin as being this guy who genuinely cares for the city, genuinely um, wants things to be quiet, and but he's willing to let things go awry for a little bit so that he could come in and be the one who cleaned it up. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be revealed later on that he's the one who sent Bullseye into the bar and ended up with Foggy being killed. I'm pretty sure that's going to show up eventually. Um, they've been planting the seeds for the Punisher to show up. I'm pretty sure it's going to be Barenthal Punisher. Um, I it's going to be interesting. I can tell you that much. So I think it really hits a lot of the same notes as the Netflix series, but it does have some of the wokeness as well. The Blue Lives Matter stuff in there. Hector Ayala being a good boy Puerto Rican who didn't do no wrong, which is fine because again, I liken him to a Daniel Penny sort of situation here. So there's a lot of little nuts and bolts there, and of course it's Disney, so there's always going to be some anti-police, Trump kind of thing, but it is what it is. It hasn't gotten that heavy yet. But it's looking like it might get that way. Um, I wouldn't be surprised if also the private investigator that Matt hired is the reason why Nikki Torres flipped and decided he was going to undermine the case of White Tiger. And now you're probably going to have a reason why White Tiger is going to be a female in the future. Is that now that Hector has been killed, it's going to be somebody who's going to take his place. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if that's what happened in the comics, but I do know that White Tiger is female in the comics now. So, um, okay, White Tiger is a character. How long has White Tiger been around? At least since the '80s, maybe since the '70s or something like that. But um, I'm not that familiar with the character. I think they were featured quite a bit in Brubaker and maybe in Bendis, but I'm not that familiar with Brubaker and Bendis. Not as familiar as I should be. I haven't read that as much as I've read Frank Miller and Charles Soule. But I have read them. I just haven't committed them to memory. But that's pretty much episodes 1 through 3. Um, it bears no resemblance to the Born Again comic, like I mentioned earlier, and because the Born Again comic was when Kingpin found out that Daredevil was Matt Murdock, and then he proceeds to destroy his life. But it does have certain elements like Karen running off and going out west to San Francisco. That's part of this series as well. Um, during the Frank Miller days, that's when she went out and ended up being a porn star and a drug addict and all that kind of stuff, which was pretty dark for the time. But we only seen Karen in the first 2 episodes. She left, but we'll see what happens with her and how her character develops. But so far, I mean, the show is not bad. You know, it's not painfully woke, but you could tell it's going in that direction. And right now, it's just a really solid show. You know, It's not as great as the Daredevil Punisher on Netflix either, though. It's solid though. It's not bad. It's not bad. If you liked the Netflix version, you should like this as well. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't, outside of if you're sensitive about the woke shit. But even if you were sensitive about the woke shit, it's not that annoying. It's not like all in your face, you know, ridiculous. But it's fine. And guess what? The police officers are the bad guys sometimes. It seems weird that I'm not sure what's motivating the the families or whatever, and all of them look nondescript. But this is meant to be well, fit into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where superheroes and all that kind of stuff is commonplace. So while I was kind of jarred by the fact that they're talking about, oh, White Tiger, he didn't have his special amulet. I'm like, wait, whoa, 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 whoa. How does anybody even know about that? But this is a world where superheroes are known by everybody. This is after the Defenders, of course. So that's fine. But that does, beg the question: are they going to reboot everything that was on Netflix? Because I would like a Luke Cage reboot if you please. I like Luke Cage. That was the second best show on Netflix to me, outside of Daredevil. I was a big fan of Luke Cage. I don't know if you want to bring back the Defenders, because who the hell wants an Iron Fist show? Nobody needs that. Maybe you could replace Iron Fist with somebody else. But I think they did an Echo TV show already too, didn't they? But I'm pretty sure that flopped, because who the fuck knows anything about Echo? But she's one of those many Daredevil love interest characters that came and gone and didn't stick. But that's part of the problem too, because I don't know what Daredevil characters they've already used. Like, have they used Typhoid Mary yet? That would be a good character to use in this series as a love interest for Daredevil, even though she wouldn't really be a love interest. She would be like a villain. But she would be an interesting case if they haven't already used Typhoid Mary, which they probably already have in one of these other series. What about the Owl? I'm not sure if they've used the Owl yet in one of these series. So there's a lot of characters that they could use to further Daredevil's story here. It's all about whether they plan to do it or not. So that's it. Unless you guys have questions or anything like that, or thoughts on the show yourself, we can wrap this thing up right now. So does anybody have any questions or concerns or thoughts or feelings or whatever about this show? If not, then I guess I'll see you guys next week. I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about it. I don't even know what day this show comes on the air, because I don't have Disney. Like, I've just been using a bootleg site, and I just go to it and refresh it and see when it pops back up. And that's what took me so long to see it. So who knows? I may forget if it gets bad, but it's not bad so far. I'm just not itching to see an episode all the time, But it's been a fun watch so far. I can't complain. All right. Appreciate everybody for stopping by. All the few people who did stop by. Let me know what you guys think of the show in the future, and I'll talk to you guys later.